Hello my loyal viewer, welcome. This is the Copeland Revelation TV and you are welcome. Thank you for viewing, watching and sharing and commenting in these videos. You are doing so well to encourage us and to let us know where we need to improve on. Now today I want to talk a very profound topic, very powerful, and I have named it as why kings and men of influence. It is a question, like it is in question form, why kings and men of influence. So I want you to understand why you need kings and men of influence in your circle or business. You need kings and men of influence in your area of dominance, in your area of work, in your project, in whatever you are doing. Why do you need men of influence? Why do you need kings? You remember that we are living among men, we are living with people, but not all these people that we are living with are of advantage to us. There are some that we are living with, but they are parasites. They are a load and a weight on us. There are people that we are living among and we are not really benefiting much from them. But then there are people that if you find them in your circle, either as your mentors, as your colleagues, as your friend, as the people you are looking up to, it will be for your own advantage. And they are not so many. So such kind of people, they are in categories and in levels. We can call them the kings and men of influence. You are looking up to kings because they are kings. They command a given influence. They command a territory. They have a following. There are a lot of benefits that you can draw from them because of who and the capacity and the offices that they hold. So, why do you need kings and men of influence? You are a businessman. You still need kings and influential people around you. You are in farming. you are in politics, you are in every kind of career or profession that you are in. You cannot ignore or pretend not to be in need of such men of influence, because these people, they are gates, they are doors, they are bridges that we can use to get into next level and next phase of our lives. I want you to understand that there are only two major reasons why we need men of influence or kings around us, as our colleagues, as our friends, as people we look up to, mentors. There are only two. Number one is because kings have resources. Men of influence, they have resources. Many a times you will meet people who have skills, they have papers, they have graduated, they have degrees, they have what it takes for them to be in certain doors. They have all the qualifications. But what now stops them, what hinders them or prevents them from getting into the next phase of their lives is maybe resources. You can meet a very good business-minded person, a gentleman who is business-oriented. He has the skills, he has the he has what it takes in terms of professionalism, training, and planning, even ideas to start a business, to start a project. But you might find him not having resources. So he has all other things except resources. So this is where now kings and men of influence come in, because with their position they can influence your ways of getting the resources. So we need men of influence. We need men of authority, men in power, kings in our dealings, in our businesses, in our project. Not because of any other thing except these two resources. You will use them as leverages. Men of influence, you will use them as leverages. Number two, why you need the men of influence in your circle, in your project, in your ministry, in your business, is because these people, they have power, they dominate, they control, they command a following, they command a given kind of influence. They have the numbers, they have authority. If they say people go left, everyone will follow them left. If they say we are going right, people will follow them on the right side. So they are men that controls, they dominate, they have authority over people. And because of power, they can do anything. That is why we need men in power. When we talk about connection, I know we are well averse or well aware of this term connection, and it may mean make a lot of meaning to you who is in this country, because nowadays you are told, if you don't know somebody in that big office, if you don't know somebody, if you do not have a godfather somewhere, you might not get that job, you might not be employed there, because connection matters. So why do we say connection matters? Because these are men in authority, these are men in power, and they can use their power to fix things, they can use their power to influence and maneuver ways, they can use their authority and influence in that office as the CEO, as the director, as the supervisor, to bring what they want and who they want to work there. So that is the second reason why you need men who are in power. You need men who dominate, men who are in control. They are in the helm of the affairs of the country. They are in the helms of the affairs of the politics. They control, they lead, they command a given kind of influence. People are looking up to them. If you have such kind of people, there are so many things in your life that will just be working, and doors will just be opening because of the leverage that of these people. Through these people will act as gates and doors for you. So you might meet a man who is who has done so well to build himself in terms of knowledge and skill. You have studied, you have everything. But if you lack these men of influence, men of capacity, kings, men in power and authority, maybe there is a level you will be limited. You might try to get into some places, into some offices, into some doors, but unfortunately, in many of these offices today, they're not looking for skills alone. It is who you know. Who you know. That is why try as much as possible. If you are in business, don't ignore and trash everybody. You need men in power. Make connection with the kings. Make connection with presidents, captains of industries, politicians. You are in ministry. You are in a different career. You need these people. You might not know or you might not understand where their office and their power and influence will come to save you and help you. So you need these people. You cannot go far in this country today and in this modern society today without these people. These people have proven over time that they are gates and doors. So I want you to understand that these people can make your life good or they can make your life miserable. No matter who you are, no matter what you have, no matter how intelligent, how skilled, how well trained and mentored you are, these people, men in power, men who dominate, men who control, and men who have resources, they can make your life good, enjoyable, comfortable, or they can make your life miserable. They can frustrate your life. Why? Because of the kind of resources they have. They can buy anything to bring you down. They can use their influence and resources to bring you down and to crush you and to smash you and you be forgotten. Just like that. Because of their financial muscle, their resources, and their power, their influence. So if they are against you, it will not be easy for you. But if they are for you, they can lay their resources down to support you. They can use their influence, their power, their dominance, their control to open doors for you. To show you how these people are powerful, I just want to base my teaching majorly on the Bible, scripture, and references. To show you how men in power and men who have resources are very powerful and influential. Look at this person called Jezebel. Jezebel was a queen in Israel. She was the wife of King Ahab. I want you to see how Jezebel, the queen, made the life of Prophet Elijah miserable. Imagine this was a prophet, not any other person, a person who hears God. Elijah was a prophet who will hear God. He will speak to God, communicate with God. He was being directed by God. He was being carried by God, the Spirit of God. Elijah was one kind of a person that would call fire down from heaven, and fire would honor. Fire would come down and consume the people that he has called the fire down for. This is a man who defied the law of gravity. He was carried to heaven. This was a man who, by his word of mouth, he brought a drought in the land of Israel for 3.5 years. Look at the kind of power and influence that this man had with God, and he had over creation and nature. Yet one woman, not even a man, a woman who is in an office of power and influence and dominance, a relevant woman who is in a big office, made the life of a prophet who hears God to run for his life, hide himself, and begin to cry to God, who has wrought great and mighty miracles through his hands. I have just told you that you are as well and as good as when these men of power and influence are with you and for you. But if they are against you, no matter who you are, they will make your life miserable. A prophet is running because a woman has given a decree, and she meant it. Jezebel meant that the day will not end before she cut down the head of Prophet Elijah. And Elijah knew the capacity and the influence of this woman. He knew the office that this woman was sitting on. These were rulers, controllers of territories, kings. They were in power, and everything that they said would come to pass because of power that was vested upon them. I want you to look at this. Imagine King Herod took the head of John the Baptist, the prophet. Imagine, because Herodias' wife, or the little girl, danced and made the king proud, King Herod. And when she was asked for what she would want as a gift or a present out of what she has done, the act of dancing and making the king happy, and the little girl, demanded for the head of a prophet. And imagine, as powerful as a prophet John the Baptist was, his head on that very day was served to that little girl. Why? Because a man in authority, a man in power, a man of influence, a man with the resources decided to go after his head. I want you not to be judgmental. Just follow me. You are going to understand. There is a given teaching that I'm bringing out of this. I'm not saying God cannot protect his people. I'm not saying if you are born again, you are walking with God, you hear God. These men in power might not or cannot have make your life miserable. No, that is not what I'm saying. I want you, don't limit yourself. Just open up your mind. Let us have an honest discussion. Let us talk. Let us discuss. Just open yourself. Open your mind so that you understand the kind of teaching that I'm bringing here. Because if I say King Herod going after a prophet, and imagine the prophet John the Baptist's head was served to the little girl because a king said so. Somebody would limit himself and say, like, now you want to mean God is not that powerful. Kings and men with the resources are more powerful than God. That is not what I'm saying. Please. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, we cannot ignore men in power. We cannot ignore men with the resources. They have authority. They have influence. They have control. They dominate in our world. So, however anointed, how much you are anointed, no matter how much you hear God, no matter how strong you can be, but if you you step on the stone of on the toe of these men of power and influence and resources, there is a way they can react that can make your life hard and tough, regrettable in this life. Why? Because of the resources and the influence, the authority, the power that is upon them. So we have seen Jezebel going after a prophet. So not even prophets are untouchable. We are seeing Herod going after the head of John the Baptist. And imagine, John the Baptist's head was cut and given to the little girl. Even Elijah, if he would have not reigned for his life and go hid himself, on that evening, his head would have been served to Queen Jezebel. So don't you be ignorant about men of power, men in power, men with influence, men with authority. I know you are born again. I know you serve God. I know you hear God. I know you are anointed. But be careful. Don't disrespect men in power and authority and expect that God will stand in for you to protect you from them out of what you have brought by for yourself and by yourself because of ignorance. These are systems. God also knows that these rulers are there. These men in power, they are there. So don't disrespect a president. Don't disrespect a deputy president. Don't disrespect somebody in government, somebody in power, somebody in a big office, and expect you will go scot-free just because you are born again, just because you are anointed. That, just understand me. These men can use their resources within their office to frustrate your life. Yet you are born again, anointed. These are prophets, great and mighty prophets we are talking about, Elijah and John the Baptist. But both, they reigned, one reigned for his life because a queen was after his head. Another one who never reigned and he was captured, beheaded, and his head served a little girl. That tells you of the kind of power and authority that the men in power have. Don't ignore, don't pretend that these people are not there. A president is a president. He's an office, he's in an office, and that office has resources. That office has power. They can do anything. They can frustrate a generation. They can frustrate a country because of the seat that they are sitting. I want you to understand that the intention of God was not to use the 10 plagues to push Pharaoh to release the Israelites. I'm just trying to make you understand the place of men in power, men in government, men in authority, places of power and authority and dominance. What they can do, their influence, their impact in the life of a person. That is what I'm really trying to bring out by this teaching. What men in government, men in positions of power, authority, influence and dominance, their impact, their effect in the lives of people. What they can do. How they can frustrate and how they can make lives miserable and unbearable for certain people. And at the same time, how they can make life so comfortable to given kinds of people. I have just told you that God the Father was not to use the 10 plagues that you have been reading in the book of Exodus to push Pharaoh, the king by then of Egypt, to release the Israelites from the land of bondage and slavery. That was not the intention of God. That was not the plan of God. That was not the mind of God. That was not the program of God. It was not part of what God had planned for the people of Israel. Of course, we know the Israelites were in the land of slavery for 430 years. But the system, the method that God had laid in place to transit them or to take them out of Egypt was not through the 10 plagues that you saw. The 10 plagues were just but an afterthought after the program, after the plan that God had to take the Israelites out of Egypt had failed because of the person whom he wanted to use. The plan B, when it had failed, God had to resort to the second plan, plan B. And the plan B was to use the 10 plagues to push Pharaoh to release the Israelites. I want you to understand, because now I want to tell you the plan A that God the Father had on how to remove or to take the Israelites out of Egypt, the land of slavery. Do you realize that God had raised Moses in a royal family? Why was it that Moses had to find himself in royalty, in the palace? Why did God just saw it wise to raise Moses in the corridors of power? I want you to understand that the reason why God sent Moses to be part of the family of the Pharaohs was because he wanted to use him and his position and the family as a prince or maybe as a king to release the Israelites. Because it was fully in the power and the hands of a king to release the Israelites. The Israelites were already in the bondage. The Israelites were already, for 400 years, they were into slavery. The government knew about them. They were the sources they were the source of labor in Egypt. So, for them to be removed from that land of slavery, for somebody to come and take them out of that land of slavery, this kind of a person must be somebody who had a partnership, a strong connection with the government. It must have been somebody who was in government, somebody who was in control, somebody who was in power. Because for the Israelites to be taken out of Egypt, For Egypt to release and lose their source of labor, it was not very easy. There were processes. That power, that authority to let the Israelites go was not vested in any other office except the office of the king. It was only in the office of the king that had the power and authority to let Israelites go. It was fully in the office. It was fully the responsibility of a president, by then King Pharaoh, to release the Israelites. No matter any other system that people would use, the only person who was mandated by constitution and law to release the Israelites from the land of slavery, to just let them go like that, was only the president, the king, by then King Pharaoh. So God knew that is the system. God knew it is what is in the constitution of Egypt. For the people of Israel to be taken out of the land of slavery, it was not just the prayer that will take them there out of the land of slavery. It was not out of their hard work that will take them out of slavery. It was not out of their warfare or rioting and causing chaos, demonstration left, right and center that would take them out of the land of Israel. You realize that these were prayerful people. They began praying to God and God heard them. And God sent them a helper of how and who was going to take them out of that land of slavery. And the man who was going to take them out of the land of slavery, Moses. If Moses would have just come like I've been sent by God, no president will sit down and listen to you. You will be taken to a psychiatrist that this man is mad. This man do not know what he is saying. Imagine today, just because you are born again, you want to walk to State House and tell your current president that you want him to fire all the Luos in Kenya. Release all the Luos to go back to where? To go to Uganda or Tanzania. Expel all the Luos in Kenya. Do you think it's very easy? There is a system. There is a process that has to be followed. It is not very easy. Even scrapping out certain offices out of constitution, there is a process that has to be followed. Even we are now talking about leasing certain government companies and parastatals to private entities. For government to lease a parastatal, a state-owned parastatal, there is a process that has to be followed. No man can just stand and just say, I want to buy this company. I want to buy this parastatal, and it will just be given like that. There is a procedure. There is a system. It was the same way. Egypt was a systematic country. It had laws and constitution. There was order to be followed. So releasing the Israelites was not just very easy. You will not just wake up one day and say, we are now going to release the Israelites from Egypt. There was a law. There was a way. There was a how. There was the system of how to release and let go of these people. Men who have lived for 400 years. Do you know, 400 years, these people, yes, they carried a different blood. They were different because they were Israelites in an Egyptian land. But for 400 years, these are men who have already gotten themselves into the lifestyle, the system of Egypt. It was in them. Years, 400 years is not small years. Those are many years. The system had entered them. The Egyptian system was in them. They were part and parcel of the Egyptian community. These are men that the Egyptian government was well aware of. They knew them. They were counting on them in terms of the GDP. They were counting on them in terms of productivity. They were the sources of labor. Imagine. So it was not very easy for the government of Egypt to release the Israelites. And that is why the plan A was that Moses would be raised in a family of Pharaoh. He will be raised as a prince. He will be raised in power. He will grow and be raised as one of the royals. And the system is that when one Pharaoh leaves power, the kind of leadership, the kind of governance was hereditary. So if Moses was going to find himself the way he found himself into the family of the pharaohs, into the family of the royals, it was very easy for him to rise into the position of a king. And him being into the position of a king, the same way Joseph rose into the position of prime minister, and you saw the influence and the impact that because of that office, he was able to bring his people, the Israelites, from Canaan to Egypt. It was because of the position of Joseph, the prime minister position, the position of power and authority that he used to bring the Israelites into Egypt. So for another person to take the Israelites from Egypt, the office of power and authority, the office of leadership, the office of governance had to be consulted, had to be in play. So it will be very easy for Moses if he would have risen into the position of a king in Egypt. If Moses, that was the plan A that God had with raising Moses in the family of the pharaohs as a royal in the palace. That one day he will rise to be a king in Egypt. And when he has risen into the position of kingship in Egypt, he will just sign a decree. He will make a decree and sign a bill into law that he has released the Israelites. That was how God had planned it. That was the intention of God putting Moses into the palace, raising Moses as a royal. So it will be very easy. It would have been easier if Moses was the king. The reason why I'm saying Moses would have been the king is because during the time when the Israelites were being released out of Egypt, the king by then was the age mate of Moses. During the time the Israelites were now being released out of the land of slavery after the 430 years, that king that signed and decreed that the Israelites to be released was an age mate. He was the age mate of Moses. They had lived together in one palace. They were trained together. They grew up together. So the plan of God for Moses to be part of the royals was for him to be a king. But he messed up the plan of God. How did he mess up the plan of God? By killing the Egyptian, and then he ran away. That was how Moses messed up the whole plan A that God had to take the Israelites out of Egypt. That was how he messed up that whole plan. So God had to come up with the plan B of how he was going to take the Israelites out of the Egypt. Because the person who was going to take the Israel, or who was going to sign into law that the Israelites are now free men who can walk out of Egypt, the land of slavery, was only the king. That mandate was only in the office of one man, the king. Now that Moses has messed up everything, he has not grew to become a king, yet God had a plan and program that he will grow and become the king there, and then it will be just very easy, signing some document and decreeing that the Israelites are free to go and worship their God in their own land. And the Israelites would have left Egypt without anyone harming himself or any other thing. But then he messed the whole plan. So the plan of God using the 10 plagues was not very easy. It was painful. Imagine lives were lost. Lives were lost. The lives of the firstborn sons of the Egyptians were lost. That was not the plan of God. That was not the plan of God before. Imagine the 10 plagues from plague 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 until 10. All these plagues, all this difficulty and rough and tough times that God brought into the Egyptians and to the king of Egypt, Pharaoh, was just to compel him, to twist him, to pressure and to push him to release the Israelites. Why? Because it was in his power to release the Israelites. And because he also had known that it was fully in his power to release the Israelites, he had played a hard man to get. And that is why God had to press him. God had to push him. God had to use the 10 plagues to twist him to let the Israelites go. He was not willing to let the Israelites go. It was not very easy for him. He knew in terms of government and the productivity of Egypt, he knew if he had let the Israelites go, the GDP of Egypt was going to go down. He understood the place and the benefit that they were getting by the labor that the Israelites were offering. So it was not very easy for him. He knew very well he was going to lose a lot. So God also had to press him. God had to use all resources and all powers available to twist him, to make him to relinquish and let the Israelites go. That was not the plan of God before. But that was now the plan B that God, because God had to take the Israelites out of Egypt, yet the power to take them out of Egypt was fully in the hands of the king. So Egypt, Moses had killed the Egyptian and he has ran away. Little did he know God had placed him into the palace with a purpose. And because of that, the whole plan had to change. But still, it was Pharaoh who had the power to release the Israelites. The whole plan of how to take the Israelites out of Egypt had to change. And it change. But one thing was constant. It was still in the office and the power of a Pharaoh, the president by then, to release the Israelites. And that was how the second plan of using the 10 plagues to push Pharaoh to release the Israelites out of Egypt came to be. Somebody, I want you to listen to me and listen good. It was through the office of the king, the high office, that the Israelites, through it, they came to Egypt. When Joseph was in partnership with the government, when Joseph was the prime minister by them, you see, that position of prime minister, the Bible says that Joseph, the king by then, made Joseph to be the second in command in his government. That only the king was ahead of Joseph. That tells you that by then, Joseph was a man in power. Joseph was like the deputy president by then. He was the man with the full authority. The office and the government of Egypt by them knew who Joseph was. Joseph was in a high office, and by that high office in Egypt, he partnered with the king and he convinced the king to bring a godly community into a godless community. He convinced the king to bring the Israelites into Egypt, and that was how the Israelites found themselves in Egypt. So it was still through the office, the high office, it was through the government that the Egyptians found themselves into Egypt. The Israelites found themselves into Egypt. So it was still through the high office, it was still through the government, it was still through the king that the Israelites were to be taken out of Egypt. Through the high office, that of the king, that was how the foreigners, the Israelites, found themselves into Egypt. It was still through the office of the king, government, that these foreigners would be allowed to leave Egypt. I've really tried to explain that to our understanding. So, God used Joseph and he planted him into the corridors of power for him to open doors for the Israelites to come to Egypt. And then Moses also was planted in the corridors of power, in the government, into the palace, in Egypt, basically and majorly for one assignment: to take the Israelites smoothly out of Egypt without war, and battle. So, by a king or a man in authority, the Israelites were brought into Egypt. And then still God wanted to continue with this system, that by a man in authority, a king or a prince, Moses, through him the Israelites were to be released out of Egypt smoothly without anyone losing his life or war between the Israelites and the Egyptians. That was the plan of God. That was the plan of God. One of God's system of intervention in the affairs of his people is that he will always connect them or have them to partner with the government of the day. That is one of the systems that God always uses to intervene in the affairs, in the matters of his people. Every time God wants to intervene in matters concerning his people, one of the systems, one of the methods that he will always use to intervene is through connecting his people, the God community, with the government of the day, or using one of his people to be in partnership with the government of the day. God will always play his cards until one of his people to be part of the government or in partnership with the government. Why? Because governments have power, and it is their say that is ruling. What they want and how they want it is what is happening. You know it. You are in this country. One of the many reasons and one of the many ways through which God can come through for us as a God community, as Christians in this country, is by raising one Christian to sit in the office of presidency. Or he will raise one Christian to be in partnership with the government of the day. Because the government has power. And it is what they want. It is what they say. That is why it is called ruling. Governments rule. Kings, they rule. It is what they say, how they want it, is how it is being done. And that is why, even for you to rule, if you are a president in this country, without you taking the House of the Senate and having more numbers in the National Assembly, you might not rule effectively. What you want, because you as a president, for you to make a certain ruling or a certain bill to be passed, it must pass through these houses, the National Assembly and the Senate. So if you are president and you have low numbers in the National Assembly and in the Senate, you will still not rule effectively, because every bill you propose will always be quashed, will always be limited and brought down, hindered in these two houses. That is why every president, we always say the winner takes it all, both the House of the Assembly and the National Assembly and the Senate, for you to rule. So government rule. What they say, how they want is what is being done. So that is why God, one of the many systems that he uses if he wants to help his people, is either to raise one of his people to sit in that position of governance, or he connects them to partner with the government of the day. That is one of the systems that God uses. So God will make his people to be part of the government or find favor with the government just for his plan to come to pass without issues. This has always been one of the strategies that God is using. God, yes, is a man of war, but he does not always want to solve his issues with humanity through war. He always has systems, procedures. He has systems that he always uses. And one of those systems is partnering his people with the government of the day. Because the government has power. What they say is what is being done. So governments are factors. They can be a hindrance or a promoter of God's plans. Governments can stand in the door and in the way of God's plan to be achieved in a generation, in a territory, or in a country. The same way Pharaoh stood in the way of God from taking the Israelites out of Egypt. Pharaoh became tough. It was a hard nut to crack. And as powerful as God was, he will not ignore him. You might think because God is all powerful, he will always violate all these principles. God honors men. God honors government. He is the one who has placed those governments. He had given the earth to the sons of men to rule and dominate it. So he will not violate that principle. God is a God of order. He is a God of principle. The Bible says, the earth, Psalms chapter 24 verse 1, the earth is the Lord's. The Lords are rulers, men in power, men in authority, men who control. So God already had given the earth into the hands of